Hey everybody, Dan LaBert, CEO of NAILBA here. Welcome to another edition, our Executive Spotlight session as part of the NAILBA 40 Hybrid. Today I'm with Founder and Chief Innovation Officer Bill Atlee of iPipeline. Bill, I think it's safe to say that where iPipeline goes, the market goes. You want to embrace that softball there?
Yeah, we're always leading edge, right, Dan?
Absolutely, absolutely. You guys, are always coming up with creative and innovative ways to move this industry forward, right? So, that leads me into why I wanted to pin you down for a few minutes. And we're talking about a changing environment. So, how has iPipeline made it out of this changing environment? Working remotely the last year and a half. What are some of the biggest observations from a leading technology company in our space to dealing with what we're all dealing with?
I think initially you saw our employees working way longer hours, and I think the result of that is that you could click a button and get someone on Zoom really fast, and it was intrusive. I mean, people were, instead of driving back and forth to work or taking dedicated lunches, that was just filling up your entire day. And normally, what took maybe 3 or 5 minutes in a hallway by the water cooler to answer a quick question turned into 30-minute meetings that you had to find out about everybody's weekend, and it just extended a lot of meetings. But we've settled in. I think we lost a little bit of our culture, where you see people around the office is probably the same for everybody. But I think that the new marketplace will look different going back. Employees really want a good, work-life balance, and we're probably going to do something of a hybrid, maybe 2 days out of the office, 3 days in, let the employees sort of choose. And it's probably necessary because in a competitive landscape where it's tough to find employees, you don't want to lose folks to other companies that are willing to be flexible or let people work at home if they choose to do so. So it's a big balance at this point.
So that plays well, right? Because time, whether it's personal or for work, is clearly a big driver.
Yeah, I was thinking about time the other day. I actually Googled when daylight savings time was, and I found something really horrifying. First of all, it's not called daylight savings time.
Okay.
It's called daylight save time. So we screw that up as Americans. And it turned out that probably like most Americans, we were all taught that we do that for the farmers because they get up early in the morning and they want to tend to the livestock, and they need that extra hour of morning daylight would help them farm. Turns out not true at all. That's just a myth that we have all been under for many years. Turns out there was a guy in 1895 named George Hudson. He was an entomologist. He basically studied bugs, and he wanted to study bugs at night when he got in from work. So he ran around to all these countries and said to them, if you would turn your clocks back and let me work at night, I'll share my research with you. I could find the cure to malaria or some vaccine. And eventually Great Britain was the first country that agreed to that. US followed a couple of years later, and the rest was history. We all change our clocks back every twice a year because of some guy was chasing butterflies, well over 100 years ago, right? But that sort of makes me feel like, man, if one guy could change time through the entire world, why is it one industry can't shorten the time it takes to get an insurance policy here? So time is a big focus at this point.
Okay, so then what impact can you affect on the insurance clock? Are you guys planning some big conspiracy here to change all of the insurance clocks times and therefore increase placement? Because I think every BGA would stop and all become even further customers of iPipeline if that was the case. So what about the insurance clock?
I definitely learned this is not an iPipeline game only. This is an industry game because we need our customers to be able to accomplish anything. But I think we're focusing on 3 major areas. One would be artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
2 is automated underwriting, and 3 is the next generation of eapp that's going to result. And when I think about artificial intelligence, Dan, it's really systems that can simulate human intelligence. So we're looking at applying this technology to all aspects of our business, whether it's quoting, whether it's your eapps, our case management, our policy delivery, and where are all these unnecessary touches that are occurring, or what are humans doing along that value chain that you can teach robotics and artificial intelligence to auto email an agent case status versus wait for a human to touch it and move it forward. And all of those less touches then result in faster speed, and ultimately it is to get higher placement ratio.
Bill, one of your colleagues on your team mentioned to me, and I've remembered the saying that if it could be measured, it could be improved. So given the fact that you're putting in the metrics, you're looking at the touches, how does this lead into underwriting, which is usually the biggest sticking point for a lot of the application
Yep.
process?
And you go back to track the score, report the score will improve. Pipeline sits on massive amount of data to be able to see how much time people are spending in particular areas, whether it's an agent or a BG or a home office, and who's responsible or guilty for that time. And we want to be able to be transparent with that data. But to your point, automated underwriting is really going to be the tail that's going to wag the dog in the future. We see that all new processes, a lot of the new technology will feed off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And today, everybody goes down the same path for the most part, whether you're 25 or 65, same with an eApp. And as a result, you have a lot of human interaction with doing underwriting. So applying your artificial intelligence there is really trying to understand how does underwriting work? What are humans making decisions on? And then let everybody go through that same process to start with, and then be gated into certain processes that hopefully automated underwriting could take over 70–80% of our outcomes, and then have a human involved 20% of the time where we've got large cases. Even medical records are going to get better with APSs so that you'll start to digitize that. And a lot of that stuff will get automated along the way. And I don't think we're too far off making that happen. You see a lot of carriers and iPipeline working with a lot of carriers that are doing automated underwriting.
So why do you believe a next gen eApp is needed? I mean, first off, I love the reference you made in the previous answer about guilty of time, right? Because no one's intentionally guilty of time. They're just ensuring the process. So take me into why you believe like that next gen eApp is so needed. And as you mentioned, some applications, especially for these BGAs that do some very large applications, there's the complexity around those applications. So tell me about the next gen eApp.
Well, if you think about the first gen eApp that we pioneered was just taking a PDF and just replicating that on a wizard screen with some rules embedded behind it to clean up your NIGOs and IGOs, sign it, submit it, right? But everybody goes down through that same path. As I said before, no matter whether your face mount's different or your age is different. And the result is you really don't need to bring someone through all those questions if you're younger age, or you may want to drill down in a particular medical area if you answered affirmative to some question. So what you're going to see is, and this is what we're working on for really what I call IGO 3.0, is to invert the signature, which is usually the last thing you do in the process. You give that authorization last, sort of a signing execution ceremony, to the beginning of the line. What that allows us to do with your authorization is go and hit all these third-party services for prescription database lookup, MIB, MVR, and then based upon what we already know about you, is then the questions get tailored on the fly to each applicant. You don't want to tell an agent on the back end that you ask a client, did they take any prescription drugs, and they say no, and then you find out that they did, and you got to go back and call them a liar. You just tell them up front what you know about them and have them react to it, which means the eApp then has to be more dynamic. It has to be able to hide and show questions based upon what you gathered up front through these third party. But today's eApp is too intensive to try to build multiple eApps from a Q&A or quality assurance and development. You got to be able to build it once. So we're heading in a direction that's more database driven. Questions are served up and rules are served up in a database. That way you can put any framework or UI around the front of it. You're not married to just the IGO look and feel. If you want to do a direct to consumer, you want to have a call center environment, you want to have an agent assist environment, you don't have to continue to build it over and over again. And
I think that's extremely innovative. The logic, not just from the technology sense, the logic makes sense. Kind of reminds me of the modern day choose your own adventure. If you remember those books back in the day, maybe we're dating ourselves a bit, but it really will make the process a lot smoother. So last question I have for giving me a few minutes of your time, and how is the industry doing from adoption perspective? I mean, we've always been a space. I'm 4 years in now, Bill, so I get to reference history. But we're always been in a position of slow to adopt. And I think the last year and a half has forced us to say, we need to up our game a little bit. We need to get around the corner, but not necessarily lead. But so give me your thoughts on that, especially everything you see at iPipeline.
Well, in brokerage, everybody's happy if someone sends them business, so they're not going to complain about getting business at the door. And so we tend to go, well, my agent likes to behave that way, and I'm not going to, rustle their feathers there. Interesting thing about paper, it doesn't need a power cord. It doesn't need a Wi-Fi connection. You
Right.
can drop it on the ground, won't break. You can skip things. You can sign things without being complete. So the complete flexibility that an agent has in paper is what tends to keep us married to that. I will tell you that we've crossed over around 4.5 million eApps of the total industry of 15 million. So we're making a dent in it now. But I think where you're going to see this big shift is when you get an agent into what I call the WIFM, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Meaning right now, the agent's sitting there going, I got to put this thing in good order for you as a carrier, but what do I get out of it, right? What do I want this pain of a Wi-Fi and typing stuff in? And automated underwriting snapped into that I would know before I go, that I would fill out a digital eApp. It would be a shorter experience by inverting that signature. And then I'm going to get a decision on the screen why I'm here in someone's house. Gives me the incentive to take that adoption from 4.5 million, for the rest of the way. So I think that's where the bang will be.
Well, Bill, I've been saying it, and people have been always giving me a strange face when I do, but it's time to retire some of the legacy systems and ways we've done things if we really ever truly want to serve the uninsured, underinsured, and increase apps along the way. So love what you guys do at iPipeline. You guys are big supporters of independent distribution, big supporters of NAILBA, all the carrier partners. So thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time. I'm really excited to hear what's coming out of iPipeline, as always is the case, right? You guys has always something that's cooking.
Well, thanks for the support and thanks for giving us a ring. I appreciate participating today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Take care.